Well, you may have missed it because of media defeatism, but Israel is actually winning the war. And that's not me saying that. That is a direct quote from a Wall Street Journal article that just came out a few days ago. Now, I think they hit the nail on the head, and the proof is in the pudding. About 12 hours ago, something cataclysmic happened, and yet it was so subtle that most mainstream media actually failed to tell you about it because they don't understand the inner workings of the Middle East. But that's okay. That's why we have this channel. Now, the event that happened 12 hours ago proves beyond a shadow of a doubt to me, to you, to anybody with half a brain that understands the Middle East, that Hamas as a political movement, as the ruler of Gaza, they're finished. The leadership is selling out, it's cashing out, it's trying to get out as fast as possible. Now, allow me to explain. You have to understand the power dynamics inside the Palestinian people, inside what's going on in the West Bank and in Gaza. You see, the Palestinian people are not as united and not as homogenous as the media tells you. In fact, there's a huge rift between Hamas and between the Palestinian Authority that was established on the back of the Fatah organization. They virtually hate each other. They absolutely are sworn enemies. And what happened is that in 2005, the Palestinian Authority rode in upon Israeli tanks to take over Gaza. And they got full sovereignty from the Israelis. And within a year, Hamas not just kicked them out, it murdered every single person they could have had their hands on and absolutely banished every single Palestinian Authority member out of Gaza within 365 days. So these guys do not just dislike each other. They're not just political rivals. This isn't Ohio State against Michigan. This is actual hate. This is actual war. And these two organizations, the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, are in a state of war since 2005, almost 20 years, 2 decades that these guys are literally trying to kill each other. Now, there's been a little bit of a stalemate recently with Hamas holding down Gaza and the Palestinian Authority holding down the West Bank. But make no mistakes about it, these guys are not, and I repeat, not friends. But the Palestinian Authority, although being less popular on the Palestinian street, does enjoy the support of the United States and of Israel, and they get to keep the money, they get to keep the police, they get to keep the infrastructure, so they're getting way more help from the Israelis and from the US than Hamas. So that makes them a very unliked organization on the Palestinian street because they are, viewed as collaborators, as cooperating with the enemy, so to speak. And in that respect, Hamas never recognized the Palestinian Authority as the true sovereign ruler of any part of the West Bank, definitely not Gaza. They see them as unlegitimate collaborators and basically as traitors. They don't give them any sort of clout whatsoever. And what happened is that because the Palestinian Authority negotiated with the Israelis, because the Palestinian Authority worked with the Americans, because the Palestinian Authority actually recognized Israel as part of the deals they signed, they've crossed the red line, which Hamas could never accept, which is recognizing the state of Israel as something real. And from that point on, Hamas and the Palestinian Authority could not coexist in the same space. Now, Hamas itself, when you go deep dive into the organization, is also a split organization. They're not as united and not as homogenous as the mainstream media and Al Jazeera would like you to think. Now, Hamas is basically divided into two separate camps that don't really coexist, but they are brought together based on their hatred towards Israel. One part is called the political bureau. These guys wear suits, they don't have any guns. And the other part is the military wing. It's the ones with the guns, with the bombs, and the ones who are carrying out all the terrorist attacks. Now, there's a huge difference between these two groups. The political bureau are fat, rich, they are corrupt, they're extremely unpopular on the Palestinian street. Guys like Ismail Haniyeh, guys like Khalid Mashal, they don't live in Gaza, they live in Qatar, they're billionaires, they have yachts, they have Bugattis. They've essentially enriched themselves on the back of the money that went to the Palestinian Authority, to Gaza, to Hamas. They kept stealing for years and years, some of the money skimming from the top, sometimes more than skimming, enriching themselves. And these guys are not very much liked, not on the Palestinian street, and definitely not by the military wing. Because the military wing is very different inherently, beyond the theft of money, beyond the corruption. The political bureau guys, the ones with the suits, the one with the Bugattis, the ones who are fat and, old and corrupt, these guys are pragmatists. They are rational players. They can be bought with money. They can be bribed. They can be worked with. The military wing of Hamas are completely the opposite of that. They're radicalized ideologists, completely irrational actors. They cannot be paid. They cannot be bought. They are in the heart of Gaza fighting the IDF every single day. They don't care about strategic losses. They don't care about potential surrenders, deals. They just want to get as many Israelis dead as possible, whether it's soldiers or civilians. Nothing is rational about these guys. They cannot be dealt with. They cannot be talked with. They cannot be convinced. Now, the reason that it's so problematic to deal with the military wing in Gaza is because they will never surrender. They don't care how many Palestinians die. They don't care how much damage and destruction happens in Gaza. They will literally fight until they have the last bullet and the last person. And they don't care about any civilian casualties. Not on the Israeli side, naturally, but also not on the Palestinian side. These guys are just ruthless killers. Now, the political bureau is a completely different story. These guys are pragmatic, they're fat, they're rich, and they are grifters. Their business model is based on stealing, skimming off the top, the aid money, and the contributions and the donations that are going to Hamas. So let's say some people donate to Hamas in order for Hamas to fight the Israelis. So they take their 10%, 15%, whatever that may be. And the reason that the military wing tolerates this is because the political wing or the political bureau guys, as much as they are despicable, they are needed. Without them, there's no way for Sinwar and his soldiers to get money. They are the tool that brings money and weapons into Gaza. Without them, it's not going to be possible. Sinwar doesn't have the connections. It doesn't have the infrastructure. And yes, they steal, and they do it for their own purpose, not to help anybody. And Sinwar accepts this because it's a necessary evil to him. I've told you many times, the way to understand the dealings of Hamas, the way to understand when Hamas is going to be finally over, is by looking at these players. Look at Egypt. Look at the political bureau. Look at the rational players. And look at how they interact with Hamas. And about 12 hours ago, Jibril Rajoub, who's one of the senior guys in the Palestinian Authority, he used to run the Palestinian secret police. He's a very high-ranking officer. So he comes back from Qatar. And apparently he had a meeting with the two guys from the political bureau, Ismail Haniyeh and Khaled Mashal. And he goes to the newspapers, not privately, he goes public and he says, look, both of them told me they are willing to join the Palestinian Authority government under us and to work with us to rebuild Gaza. Now, the official excuse is they're doing it because of Palestinian unity, etc., etc. But here's the thing. For them to join the Palestinian Authority government would mean de facto that they would be recognizing Israel, accepting the fact that they will only have half of the land, not the entire land like Hamas has in its charter, and they will be coordinating with Israel on security matters and economic matters and logistic matters, everything the Palestinian Authority has been doing for the past 20 years. So for Hamas to join the Palestinian Authority-led government and to recognize Israel and to collaborate with Israel side by side, that is against the absolute basics of the creed of the way Hamas is built, against the DNA, the very basic DNA of Hamas. For them to agree to that would be essentially to say something that was unspeakable before October 7th. The gravy train is about to end. Once Hamas is finally finished, the funding is literally drying up as we speak. UNRWA is getting defunded. Hamas isn't going to get any more donations. The Israelis and the US is killing the supply chains, the money wires. So the gravy train is stopping, if not already stopped. And obviously, they would love to keep their lifestyle going, and they need money for that. So what they're doing essentially is bailing on Hamas, as it is already dying, and selling out the Hamas brand to the Palestinian Authority by joining the government. Because the PA, the Palestinian Authority, is lacking in cachet. They're lacking in trust. They're not popular on the Palestinian street. They're viewed as the old, corrupt Israeli collaborators, right? So Hamas joining the government, even officially joining the government by these political bureau guys who haven't stepped foot in Gaza in years, it kind of adds to the cachet of the Palestinian Authority. They don't want to ride into town on top of Israeli tanks. So it's a mutually beneficial deal. While the political bureau people will never step foot in Gaza, they will keep their life, their Bugattis, their yachts, they'll keep getting paid. but they're selling the Hamas brand for pennies on the dollar because it's over. And since the Palestinian Authority would love to take the Hamas brand, absorb it, swallow it, and then poop it out and make it go away forever to become the hegemonious kind of owner of Gaza and the West Bank, is going to pay these political bureau guys a few million, if not a few $billion, to play ball and stay quiet. Now, you have to read the map here in order to understand that Hamas is gone. Sinwar is gone. It's finished. 100%. You have the Palestinian Authority now going public, admitting that they will be swallowing up Hamas and that Hamas operators abroad agree to this. On top of it, you have Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State, basically making the rounds of rebuilding the Abraham Accords and the regional alliance against Iran. You have the United Arab Emirates building hospitals and desalination plants in Gaza as we speak. There would be no plants being built on the ground if Hamas was still in power or able to function. The Israelis and the US would have never approved this. So the fact that we have construction, the beginning of a rebuild, that means that Hamas is de facto gone. We have Egypt talking to the Israelis about how the Israelis will control the Philadelphia route, the Philadelphia corridor, after saying a month ago, that's war if they do that. So Egypt is playing ball, which means they're no longer fearful of Hamas. And we have vocal, public hostage deal disagreements. While the political bureau guys were pushing the new hostage deal, saying, yeah, that's a good deal, let's do it, because it would essentially end the war for 6 months and would buy them a lot of time to absorb themselves into the Palestinian Authority, the military guys said, no deal. We're staying here, we're fighting until the end. So they torpedoed the deal from inside, the military wing people, but it exposed the dichotomy, the antagonism between these two camps and how now they have different interests. The political bureau, the interest is survival. The military guys, their interest is to die on their sword, whatever that may be, on their shield, right? And you can see the differences right now. Now, Iran's attempt to stop the regional alliance, the Abraham Accords, the economic corridor from India to Europe through Saudi and Israel, it's failing. And it's now dealing with the loss of Hamas as one of its proxies. It's going away. Maybe the Houthi rebels are not going to be the same after the U.S. is done bombarding them. And they have a lot of instability back home. The Balochis want their own state. You have bombings from ISIS. You have Pakistan bombing inside Iran. You have a lot of issues. And we haven't even said a word about the fact that the regime in Iran is highly unpopular. The Iranian people are starting to form some sort of an opposition to this thing. So they have to address a lot of problems back home. And the only way they have left right now to torpedo whatever the US and Israel is cooking, which is the new Abraham Accords, is to send Hezbollah in. Now you do that, you essentially wipe out Lebanon and you wipe out your best proxy. Because if they do that, well, the Israelis will feel a lot of pain. Infrastructure loss is going to be very painful. But Lebanon will be decimated and Hezbollah will be gone. And at that point, there's no deterrence for Israel to strike any Iranian targets, including some quasi-nuclear developments, let's put it this way. So the chances of Iran of pulling that trigger, they do exist. It's still the Middle East. Anything can happen. But right now, it seems more likely than not that Israel is winning this war, but they ain't over yet. Now, as always, if you'd like to support our work here, because these videos are not fully monetized, we'd appreciate if you could join our Patreon at patreon.com/Tom Nash Report. We have 50 new members over the past month. We appreciate every single one of you. You are the ones who help keep this project going. Thank you so much. And if you haven't yet, watch the video I posted just a couple days ago about the shadow war that Iran is now waging in the Middle East. It's a video I'm going to put right here. If you haven't yet, subscribe right here. I'll see you in the next one.